All right, welcome to Talking Investing. I'm Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. We have some huge news coming up this week that is going to affect Bitcoin. It's going to affect the entire market. So we are definitely going to get to that in the middle of this video. Obviously, we're talking about the Fed meeting on Wednesday. So we are going to talk about that. But first, I want to get to a lot of other things. We had a big week for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners last week. We had a bunch of news for some of the Bitcoin miners. We had some big news on a major purchase of Bitcoin last week. So we do have a lot to go through. We talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners all the time on this channel. So if that is content that you're interested in, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, we're going for 300 likes on this video. If you guys could help us out and do us a big favor and smash the like button, it really does help the video out and it does help the channel out a lot. And I want to take just a minute and thank everybody. We did get to our like goal on every video last week, so that is much appreciated. Thank you so much. Okay, with that said, let's talk about Bitcoin. We're going to start out by just quickly going through what happened last week. I also want to talk year to date and talk some trends. So let's start out with last week's action on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. Okay, you're going to see this chart is green from top to bottom. So all 12 of the Bitcoin miners that we followed were green, and not just a little bit. Last week was a very good week for Bitcoin, and it was a very good week for the Bitcoin miners. Now, this was some relief because we had 2 weeks in a row that were brutal. So if you've been following the channel, we went through that in detail. We'll take a quick look at those in a minute as well. So it is worth putting in perspective. Even with this huge up week, with all 12 Bitcoin miners being green anywhere from 13% to 26%, none of these Bitcoin miners are even back to where they were just 2 weeks ago. So this is the volatility of the Bitcoin miners. We talk about this all the time on this channel. If this type of volatility is too much for you, then this is probably not a good space for you to be in. I know a lot of you have been here for a long time and you are used to it, but even with that said, it is a rocky road and it is hard to tolerate. So congratulations to those hanging in there, and congratulations last week to a nice green week. So you're going to see Bitcoin, as always, is in gold on this chart, up 12%. So all 12 of the Bitcoin miners did do better than that. Riot at the bottom of the list, up 13%. So that is a nice week for Riot, but it was pretty much one-to-one with Bitcoin. And Riot is way down on the year. When we get to the year to date, you're going to see they are in dead last place just from a stock performance standpoint. On the other side of this list, we have BitDeer up 26%. On no particular news, in my opinion. HUT up 25%. So we had some big movers. Marathon, which is the largest by market cap, was up 21%. Core Scientific is one of the larger market caps. That was up 20%. So a very, very nice week. Again, congratulations if you guys made some money on swing trades or whatever the case may be in the past week. It was just nice to see a green week. With that said, I'm going to take a quick peek at the last couple of weeks before that. So with Bitcoin up 12% last week, if you go just 1 week before that, you're going to see Bitcoin was down 9%. All 12 of the Bitcoin miners were in the red, and fairly substantially. And then if we go to the week before that, you're going to see Bitcoin was down 8%. And again, all 12 of the Bitcoin miners in the red fairly substantially. This week, 10 of the 12 underperformed Bitcoin. The other week, 12 out of 12 underperformed Bitcoin. So you can see with these three charts that we just looked at, even with a huge green week last week, we're still not back to where we were 2 weeks ago. So to put that into a bigger perspective, let's take a look at year to date. So from a year to date standpoint, 10 of the 12 Bitcoin miners are underperforming Bitcoin, and they're substantially underperforming Bitcoin. Let's get to the two outliers. Core Scientific and TeraWulf are actually outperforming Bitcoin fairly substantially. Core Scientific's now up over 100% year to date. TeraWulf is up 77% year to date. These are off of their highs for the year, but they are still green and they're still substantially outperforming Bitcoin. This is the type of behavior we hope to see from our Bitcoin miners. But obviously, the rest of the pack is not yet performing this way. One of the reasons for that is we're about 6 months into a sideways trend for Bitcoin. It's off of its highs from March of 74,000. We're under 60,000 as I'm making this video, which is still right inside of our range that we've been trading in, like I said, for the last 6 months. And the Bitcoin miners, this is not a good spot for them. Post-halving, we have not gotten our post-halving pop on Bitcoin, and it's causing these Bitcoin miners to really, really struggle. You're seeing that in the charts, and I do think they're going to continue to be a tough investment to hold in the short term for as long as we remain inside of this range. With that said, at some point, ultimately, it's my personal opinion, we will break out of the top side of this range, and then I do think these will make big moves if that happens. So obviously, none none of this is financial advice. I don't know when or if that will happen, but this is the way things have happened in previous cycles. So again, only time will tell. Okay, so in third place on this chart is Iron, which is now in the green. They are back in the green. Iron at one point was up over 100% year to date. They had a massive pullback. They went into the red down year to date, and now finally this last week they did pop back into the green. So up 6% in third place, but that is dramatically underperforming Bitcoin, which you'll see in gold is up 42% year to date, even though it's off of its highs for the year and its all-time high, which it hit this year. It's still having a nice year, up 42%. Now, the rest of the Bitcoin miners are in the red, anywhere from 15 to 53%. So you can see at the bottom of this list is Riot, down 53%. From a stock standpoint, this continues to underperform by far all of its peers. So, this is one of those data points that we look at and see, is this a buying opportunity, or is there a reason that Riot is in last place from a stock performance? Obviously, that is for you to decide for your own personal investing. But this chart continues to be frustrating, with 9 of the 12 Bitcoin miners in the red year to date, and we're now 8.5 months through the year. Okay, there were a few reasons to be optimistic last week. The first thing I want to go through is what the Bitcoin ETFs did, because there was a massive trend reversal. We did call this out about a week ago, and it did play out exactly like we expected. So you see, this is a chart of the Bitcoin spot ETF inflows and outflows. And if you look at this chart, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days in a row ending September 6th, which was a Friday. 8 days in a row of outflows or red days. That was an all-time record. We've had 7 days in a row a couple of different times. So each time that has happened, it's kind of represented a local bottom, and it was an indicator that we were due for a trend reversal. Well, those 8 days in a row, we had about $1.2 billion of outflows in the spot ETFs, but you can see this last week, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 5 days were net inflows. We only had one red day, and this was about $500 million of inflows, $250 million of which happened on Friday. So the Bitcoin spot ETFs did have a trend reversal last week. It did look like they were due for this to happen, so we're going to see what happens this week. But this is one of the reasons that Bitcoin had such a nice week last week. There is a really strong correlation, and it's not perfect. There's always exceptions. But, when we have these streaks of outflows, that tends to create a big pullback, or at least correspond with a big pullback in Bitcoin. And then when that reverses, you saw Bitcoin had a nice rally last week. We're going to be keeping our eye on this every day and see what's happening this week. With that said, I'm going to keep saying there is a Fed meeting on Wednesday. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. And really, that is going to be the big news of the week this week. But before we get to that, there was some other big news for Bitcoin last week. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy purchased 18.3 thousand or 18,300 more Bitcoin for $1.1 billion. They now have just under 245,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. That is the most of any publicly traded company in the world, and it's 10 times the company in second place, which, by the way, is Marathon, one of the stocks that we follow here, one of our 12 Bitcoin miners. Marathon now has about 25,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet, so that's about 1/10 of what MicroStrategy has, and that is in second place. So you can see MicroStrategy is the ultimate bull on Bitcoin. This is a very strong play on Bitcoin. We do include it on our list that we follow on the channel, even though it's not a Bitcoin miner, because it's just such a direct correlation with Bitcoin. So this is very bullish. MicroStrategy and Saylor continue to buy Bitcoin, and I do think we're seeing a lot of people buying the dips, which is one of the reasons we're stuck in this range. We do have some support at the bottom of this range as companies like MicroStrategy, like the spot ETFs, continue to buy up these dips. Okay, then there was a couple of Bitcoin miners that did announce some news last week. CleanSpark, in my opinion, had the biggest announcement. So you're going to see on September 11th, CleanSpark announced to add 5 exahash and increase 2024 guidance with acquisition of 7 additional Bitcoin mining facilities. So this addition of 5 exahash, they now are adjusting their 2024 target exahash from 32 exahash to 37 exahash by the end of 2024. So the only company that has larger growth plans than that is Marathon, which is targeting 50 exahash. So you're going to see, I think, by the end of the year, and it's already happened. Marathon, from a number of Bitcoin mined per month, is in first place, and it's not even close. And CleanSpark is in second place, and that's not even close. For now, those two seem to be pulling away from the pack. I will say there are several other Bitcoin miners with big growth plans. Riot has big growth plans. Iron has big growth plans. CleanSpark has big growth plans. Those are the ones that have the biggest 2024 growth plans, but several of the other companies have big growth plans for 2025, so we're going to keep our eye on all of this as well. But this was big news for CleanSpark, and they put out another press release right after this. Okay, CleanSpark hash rate exceeds 26 exahash. So in their monthly operational report, which they put out just 2 weeks prior to this, they were at 22.6 exahash. So they've already, by September 12th, just 12 days later, gotten up to 26 exahash. So like I said, they continue to grow and put distance between themselves and the rest of the field. So this was a big announcement for CleanSpark. The other company that put out a big announcement last week was Bitfarms. So you'll see here, Bitfarms enters into 10,000 miner hosting agreement with Stronghold Digital Mining. So Bitfarms is buying Stronghold. So essentially what's happening here, you're going to see there's an agreement to support 2.2 exahash with energization expected in October, 2 months ahead of schedule. So instead of waiting for this deal to close and get their machines up and running, they're accelerating that process. They're getting them in ahead of schedule. So by doing this, they say company reiterates 2024 and 2025 guidance. And just to remind, their guidance for 2024 is 21 exahash. So this is another company that has big growth plans, and their guidance for 2025 is 35 exahash. So they're saying they are still on track for that. This 2.2 exahash getting up and running in October is going to help them reach that goal. Now, obviously, if the deal goes through, which we think it will, and Bitfarms buys Stronghold, you know, the details and particulars of this deal don't matter because ultimately Bitfarms and Stronghold will be one and the same. But this deal is not closed yet, so we'll have to wait and see what happens. Okay, now the big news of this week by far. Here's an article from Yahoo Finance today. Fed interest rate decision looms in critical week for the markets. This is highly anticipated. We have been waiting all year. It has been 4 years since the Fed has cut interest rates. So this is a little bit of an unknown for Bitcoin. They've only had 2 times that they've lowered interest rates since Bitcoin came into existence. In the fall of 2019, they did a very small amount of rate cuts. And then in March of 2020, they did a couple of emergency rate cuts. So one of those times, Bitcoin reacted poorly. One of those times sent Bitcoin off to the races. So from that standpoint, we really don't have a lot of historical data to tell us what the impact of that will be. But that's not really the issue. If we look at the Fed CME watch tool, so this is what the market is pricing in for the potential rate cut. And again, today is Monday. This is happening Wednesday in the middle of the trading day. So the Fed Watch tool, as of now, has a 65% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut. This has been having wild swings. If you look at the bottom here, if you can see this, 1 month ago, there was a 25% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut. So it was pretty much baked in that we were going to have a 25 basis point rate cut. That was conventional wisdom for, the better part of the last month. And then all of a sudden, this flipped. By Friday, this was at exactly 50-50. And now today, Monday morning, we're at 65%. So we're going to see by the time we hit Wednesday. One of the things that's tough about this is this uncertainty in what the Fed is going to do, whether it's going to be 25 basis points or 50 basis points. The market does not like uncertainty. And so I think this greatly increases the chances that this is going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news situation. It may be a sell the rumor, sell the news situation. We will see what happens, but this amount of uncertainty is not good. We were actually better off, in my opinion, when 25 basis points was kind of agreed upon by the market because they knew they were pricing it in and there was not a potential whammy sitting out there. But now we sit here again in a matter of flux and uncertainty. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. Most of the time, these reactions, they can be extremely volatile, but they do shake out usually over the course of a few days. So however this goes, I would expect a bunch of volatility going up to this, and then the day of this is typically potentially extreme volatility. So I just mentioned this and I'm kind of reiterating it because we have seen really vicious moves on the day that the Fed meets. And those vicious moves have been on days that the Fed has not cut rates. Remember, we have not had a rate cut in 4 years. So we're going to see what happens, but I would pay close attention to this. This is the big news of the week, barring some unforeseen other thing happening. So I'm just going to close out on the 15-minute time frame, and by the time you watch this, this could be dramatically different. Again, Bitcoin does move quickly, but you're going to see this gold line is where Bitcoin was on Friday when the market closed. So the market just opened, and we did get in the first 15-minute candle, we have had almost a 3% pullback in Bitcoin. We will have to see if that reverses itself today. The Bitcoin miners are all down big early in the day, but again, we've seen many days where that reverses in the middle of the day. So we'll see, will they continue to accelerate to the downside? Are they going to recover and end up having a green day? And all of this inside of the context of what I'm really looking at and what I'm really focused on is what is going to happen on Wednesday. So that's what's going on with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. Thanks everybody for watching. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel, and of course, smash the like button. Thanks so much, and we will see you in the next video.